when we invite people in to do webinars or
Mhm.
trainings or programs, what we miss is that um, it's not knowledge that
Yeah.
changes people. It's practice that changes
Yes.
people. And
Mhm.
so, how do we build in practice runs of whatever the change is that's needed so that the culture can actually shift? And so, when I tend to work often with a leader about the practices that need to be implemented on a team
Mhm.
to just tweak things a little bit so we can increase trust, increase belonging, and when those two things increase, there is a cascade effect in other areas. But I would just say let your socials be a place where no, don't be careless, don't put rubbish, but let people see your point of view on real things in the world.
Mhm.
Because that's how we build relationship with people, as in connection, human
Mhm.
emotional connection, because of our shared points of views and our shared passions
Mhm.
and our shared griefs. And so let that be something that people can see about you. Sometimes we make ourselves very stripped down because we don't want to offend anybody,
Mhm.
and I think that's part of what makes social media so fake right now.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Your Lab Central. Today I'm joined with Faith. So, Faith, would you like to tell our audience why they should be excited about this conversation today?
Hi, Aditya. I'm so happy to be here. I don't know why they should be excited, but I love the fact that I work in organizations that want to people better. In other words, I support organizations care for the humans that actually get the job done, and organizations that know that their impact is really dependent on how they support the people on their teams.
Mhm. Now,
Yeah.
as far as I understand, from my limited understanding, every organization depends on the people that are there in them to actually perform and grow, right? So, where do we
Right.
get started? So, this is the basic core fundamental of organizational growth, performance, and everything.
You would think so. You would think so. And yet, because of industrial models that we've adopted and because of some of the harmful work practices that we've inherited, and maybe even colonizer issues associated with imperialism and colonization, what we have are work models that extract from humans and use them as spare parts. And even when we dress it up in really pretty ways that we have our, community outreach impact and all these things, we have HR departments that offer care, the business models are so built to extract that people are consumed. So you find that people there's burnout, increased low engagement, and all these things, and a lot of it is from the workplace. And so people go home to recover from work and then go back to work. And you're finding that, especially now where you have four or five generations in the workplace at the same time,
Uh-huh.
issues with communication, issues with conflict, issues with multiculturalism, where some cultures are not honored and others are centered, you end up with so much isolation and disconnect that productivity is definitely dropping in a lot of workplaces and people's well-being is being affected. So I tend to challenge teamwork. I tend to challenge organizations that want to improve their teamwork by saying, hey, this is not, you don't need a better Slack channel. You don't need a new like productivity tool.
Mhm.
What you need is to care for people. And
Right.
if you cared for people like we care for the machinery that's doing some of the stuff on the production line, you'd
Yeah.
actually just get the kind of output that you really want.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of pain points that you've just mentioned in this short duration: well-being, teamwork, organizational capabilities, diversity. I mean, I just can't enlist all of them right now. But then, starting from the basic one that we talked about, right? Again, that how can organizations actually care for their employees, right? So, where should they be starting from? Where is everybody failing?
I think everybody believes that the job description that people should just do their jobs.
Mhm.
If people would just do their jobs, everything would be okay.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a function of just seeing people as something you shove money, you give job description, and effort comes out. It's the information processing model. And
Mhm.
I think if we actually see people as nature, like the things that we're learning about ecosystem in nature, we need to be applying to the workplace. And
Okay.
so, where are we failing? Workplaces think that they don't have to meet all of a human's core needs at work.
Yeah.
There, it's as if we should have our needs met outside, fill ourselves up, come to work, and so what do humans need fundamentally, aside from the physical needs? Just emotional well-being,
Mhm.
healthy relationships, um, to be able to contribute and show your competence in ways that fit you,
Yeah.
not to try to do somebody else's job, but to be able to show that competence, to have environments that reduce the barriers to your contribution without you having to climb all over everything to make it happen. So I think that when organizations center that and
Mhm.
ask themselves the question, before they say, hey, we need to hire this person, they should be saying, what are the barriers that this person is likely to encounter here
Mhm.
based on the kind of organization we are? How do we reduce those barriers?
Yeah.
Instead of having kind of boilerplate compensation plans, it's how is what we're offering supporting this actual human? Not as if a human is like a pen where everybody needs the same thing. So there is the industrial model that says everybody needs the same thing and can produce in the same ways. And I'm saying that's where we're failing.
Yeah.
If we could kind of turn on our awareness of what humans actually need, then we could support them better in the workplace.
Now, I've noticed and observed that a lot of organizations have these well-being programs, these employment benefits, and all these practices that they tell that, yeah, we are so employee-centric and so on and so forth. But when it boils down to the reality, it's always performance, performance, performance for a lot of organizations, right? And despite all the employee benefits that they might have, if the employees themselves are not willing to, I don't know, emanate those values or just say create that toxic culture by themselves. How much can these sensitization programs or well-beings actually help these organizations? Because you could go on doing these again and again and again, but at the end of the day, it's the employees who have to either take it in and then bring it out in their own versions, right? So
Yeah.
how does this cycle, I don't know, start itself?
Yeah, and so I think everything is environment, right? If I pump the oxygen out of this room right now, no amount of employee training and well-being program is going to get you to perform well, right? So what organizations are often missing is that there is a culture in the workplace that is 80% contributing to how every employee feels and performs. What is that culture? And the culture is about how are people connecting with each other? How are people communicating? What's the way we do things around here? Are people hyperprotective because there's low trust, or have we built trust in the organization? When we invite people in to do webinars or
Mhm.
trainings or programs, what we miss is that um, it's not knowledge that
Yeah.
changes people, it's practice that changes
Yes.
people. And
Mhm.
so, how do we build in practice runs of whatever the change is that's needed so that the culture can actually shift? And so, when I tend to work often with a leader about the practices that need to be implemented on a team to just tweak things a little bit so we can increase trust, increase belonging, and when those two things increase, there is a cascade effect in other areas.
Okay. Now, since these are teams that we are talking about, right? Uh, there are different kinds of people. Okay. Now, sometimes the distrust that we are talking about also emanates from the diversity in the team itself,
Right.
because cultural differences and I know age gaps, as you mentioned, like multiple generations working in the same office. So, as leadership, obviously, there's trainings and sensitization that you do, but from the leadership perspective, as a leader, what should be the steps taking they should be taking forward?
Yeah, I think leaders have to assume that trust is low.
Yeah,
Like in we cannot like there's
that's
a way
right.
that leaders assume that where everybody will get along. It's rubbish. We're not gonna get along. We
Yeah,
are going to try to protect ourselves from harm from other people, and
right.
especially in the climate that we're in. And so if leaders assume that trust is low, I have a teamwork model that I've talked about on my podcast. It has four phases.
Mhm.
And although there are different tasks in each phase,
Mhm.
you have to build trust in phase one, and then in phase two, you build trust, and then in phase three, you also build trust. And then by the time you're at phase four, you also build trust. Trust is one of those things that is when you've been building trust a while, trust in fractions can cause it to disappear in a second. And so leaders must have the ability to, in a diverse space, build the ability to invite trust, to be vulnerable, and to make it safe to do so. And of course, we know there's no such thing as safety, there will be harm. But what we also want to be building is the ability for the team to take responsibility for harm and to repair harm. I think for me, these are essentials of any, it could be a coding team, or it could be a manufacturing team, or it could be a medical health team.
Mhm.
If we're not able to bridge across difference in ways that are trustworthy, because trust is built when people show up as trustworthy.
Yeah,
If we're not able to do this bridging across difference in ways that are trustworthy, then the team is not sustainable. They can perform well
yeah.
one off, but they're not going to be able to keep the performance going.
Now, from the team's perspective, we just talked about the leadership. Now, the team is comprised of several levels, right? Now, I want to talk about somebody who's at the lowest rung, the junior most person. Okay. Now, there's a saying that be the change that you want to see in the world. But in an organization, is it actually possible to change the culture bottom up, and rather not just top down?
I think it's possible to change it bottom up, but not by yourself. Like
Right.
it has to be a groundswell. So I tend to tell leaders, first of all, on your team, you want to set the level so that there are no levels, there's no hierarchy. Five people on the team, that newest person that comes in, it can't be their responsibility. It
Mm.
has to be the team's responsibility to include them and make space for them. But
Yeah.
once you've built your team and created that environment, that can be a groundswell. So those people will go on other teams and then they can influence in terms of a better way, but they have to experience it first, I think. So that newest person, I think that that's the hardest role to be in
Yeah.
because you can come in with all your great ideas
Uh,
and people are like, no, this is, power dynamics are real. And so the people have more power. You are the person at the most risk. It's
mhm.
very difficult. And I think for people, when you're new in the space, you have to find like-minded people, even on other teams, and form your own little collective for support if you're wanting to be able to influence what happens on your team.
Now we're talking about influence, and just influence just came into the conversation. So, uh, when we go out, right, we create a network of people that we have, starting from our little team and then across the organization. How are these organizations? Obviously, there is a lot at play when you try to build a network in the organization itself. But what are the basic advantages that a regular person can have by building a network in their own organization?
Yeah, I think that what it increases our ability to be human with each other because the more people that we're connected to who actually see us as real, not just for our roles and what the benefits are of knowing
Yeah.
us, but see me as a human being, mother of kids who have these kinds of child or whatever, the more we can stop just codifying people into these little boxes. But then when we're having the conversations where decision making is being
Hmm.
done, then we know people in that intangible way that humans can know people. And so I think as we network, the 6 degrees of separation is real,
Yeah.
right? As we network, you just never know who opens doors or who is becomes the person who can influence culture change
Yeah.
and then opens the door for another person to step into that space. And so I tend to encourage networking as real friendship.
Mhm.
And in the context of real friendship, assuming that we're able to be safe and not be at risk. Like I don't believe you should put your mortgage at risk, right?
Yeah.
Collect your money. But also, how can we allow ourselves to be truly seen so that the person who has access to that resource that we actually need, when they get in contact with it or that introduction, they
Yeah.
can set that up for us. So yeah.
Now, this network, okay, that we're just trying to create is not just in the organization, but outside as well, right? And one tool that's been very useful for everybody these days is LinkedIn when trying to create such an external network. Uh, I'll go to the employee first. I want to know your experience with LinkedIn. How does it help? Is it of any help to you? What are you doing on LinkedIn?
I have mixed feelings about social media in general
Okay,
because I think what has happened is that we're all performing now.
right.
There's a way that social media in its origins was a way to get a real look at each other.
That's true.
But now that we know that it's a tool, then we are all fronting. And I'm not against having the right persona, but then it's like if we all know the rules of the game and we're all playing it, then how do I actually know what your values are? And how do I actually know what your, what like what's the mission that you're trying to create in the world? I just know the theater that you've created on LinkedIn. So I actually am a little skeptical as much as I will offer content on LinkedIn and people will be appreciative. I see LinkedIn, for me anyway, as a place, as a secondary place. I
Okay.
build quality relationships first. And in those quality relationships, if somebody talks about me to someone else, then they might check LinkedIn and they might get some information that helps them to have a conversation with me. Or I may have this has happened quite a lot, that I'll have a quality conversation with a person and I leave them thinking. Then they go to LinkedIn and they go to other socials and they kind of fill in the information
Okay.
space. So I see it as a repository of helping people to get a 360 of who I am.
Yeah.
Because again, I want you to have quality relationship with me and I want you to know what's required. I'm a little odd. I talk a lot. I follow the rabbit holes. And I want you to see that in my content. I want you to see that in the interviews so that when we are in conversation, you're not surprised.
So, if you had to give a tip to somebody out who's out there trying to create a network using social media, based on your perspective, what would be one tip that you would share on
Yeah, I
social?
think make social media. Well, I'll say two things. We can all, myself included, get really caught up in this idea of platform
Yeah,
and how many people are listening and what's your viewership and so on. But back to the 6 degrees of separation, that we just never know who will connect us to who.
yeah,
And so the perspective I have when I leave my house, hi, good morning, how's your dog, and things like that. I say that and it's just one person.
yeah.
Can I do that in my socials, right? And so, can I honor the four people who are actually listening and treat them as valuable and offer them my very best? And I'd say do that, right? Just don't get super concerned with platform. And then let your socials be a place where people can see the full humanity of who you are. If people reject you because of your full humanity, you don't want to do business with those people anyway. And I know that that feels hard, it feels risky, but I would just say let your socials be a place where no, don't be careless, don't put rubbish, but let people see your point of view on real things in the world.
Mhm,
Because that's how we build relationship with people, as in connection, human
mhm,
emotional connection, because of our shared points of views and our shared passions
mhm,
and our shared griefs. And so let that be something that people can see about you. Sometimes we make ourselves very stripped down because we don't want to offend anybody,
mhm.
and I think that's part of what makes social media so fake right now.
Now, I just want to ask, I see two books in the background, so want to know the peak performing team, and I think it's Parenting Like a Ninja. So if you can just
Yeah.
something about what these books are, because these are two different, I don't know,
Yeah.
dynamics
So
at the
I will
beginning.
say, first of all, the peak performing team is a it's a it's a hanger, right?
Oh, okay.
Because I was writing the book, and then what I did was I made it into a podcast mini series, so like a 6 episode series with
Okay.
a workbook, with an assessment tool, a workbook, and so I did it that way instead. And I keep saying I'm going to actually write the book, but it was more accessible as a mini series that people then listened to, did the assessment, and so on. But I'll go back to parenting like a ninja. My oldest has autism, and I have engineering in my background, I have education in my background, and I realized that when you're caring for somebody with complex needs, it
Mhm.
impacts your professional engagement in really critical ways, especially if you're the primary caregiver, especially if you're the maternal caregiver. And so I was seeing a lot of people like me who were struggling with, oh, how do we engage, and the workplace. This is actually where my whole passion for having more inclusive workplaces came from, because the workplace didn't include people like me. They wanted me to perform as if I slept the whole night. I'm like, I'm not sleeping the whole night. My son doesn't sleep. Um, and so the parenting like a ninja is about how do you actually own the life you have, and
Yeah.
how do you listen to what you really love, even though you're caring for people with complex needs? And how do you design your work, or barter, or like advocate for the kind of job that you want, given who you are? And so it's in essence about a parent including themselves in their professional pathway. And I think that the peak performing team, although it seems like a different topic, peak performing team is about how do we build teams
Okay.
where people are included, where the actual human is honored. And so it's about me now, okay, fine. As a parent, I'm learning how to include myself in my own business development and so on. But if I was on a team, what would I need?
Mhm.
And if I was a team leader, how would I include people like me whose lives are complicated, whose situation is the way that it is? Because it can't be that the workplace is just for people who have sane lives. Like,
Right.
who are those people who have nothing else going on except they go to work and then they go home and they feel okay? Like, everybody has so much else going on, and family members with so many other things going on, that we must be able to build productive teamwork
Mhm.
without having to shut off those parts of ourselves.
Right. Now, just try on that note that you ended, just trying to be the devil's advocate here. Okay. From the employer's perspective. Okay. Now,
Yeah,
sometimes some employers, I don't know if not all, at least some employers are out there looking for employees who are perfectly sane, who have nothing else going on in their lives, and they're
right,
just here, get to work, finish work, overperform, not just be average, but overperform. And
right.
they're there looking for such people. But then again, they'll still try to portray that they are inclusive workplaces, diverse workplaces, and so on and so forth. Now,
Mhm.
how do you try to explain this dichotomy to them?
I don't, because I think if
It's
you are
not what
that
we expect.
person, then good for you. But what I
Yeah,
tend to say is that the research is clear. The
yeah,
research is clear. It is massively expensive to run business the way we're doing it now.
right,
That I don't remember if it was 40 or 50% of people leave within 6 months of being hired.
right,
So we run expensive recruitment campaigns,
yeah,
expensive onboarding. Like onboarding, I saw the numbers I saw for the US was something in the region of $4,000 to $6,000 per employee for onboarding, just in terms of time that others spend and so on. So you've on recruitment, onboarding, and then half of these people leave in 6 months. The
hmm,
cost of an employee, replacing an employee, is somewhere between 50% and 150% of their salary.
okay,
So these old models are leaking money everywhere. Not just that, but for the people who stay, within a 6 months, engagement is dropped, if not in less time.
yeah,
So we have 50% engagement for the people who've stayed. We have poor quality decision making, no innovation. People are just trying to toe the line.
Yeah.
Whether a few years ago it was the quiet quitting.
Yeah.
All of that, if you're paying somebody, $50,000 for the year and they are 50% engaged, you've wasted $25,000.
That's right.
And so I'm saying that what people are not doing is the math. The math of healthy humans in the workplace, like the engagement doubles once people start to feel that you care about them and that they belong.
Mhm.
Engagement doubles. When engagement doubles, people are actually willing, if you call them and say, "Oh my goodness, we're in a crisis," they're like, "I'll help you."
Uh-huh.
Whereas if you are just that kind of boss and you call somebody in a crisis, they're like, "I have PTO. I'm taking it," you know? And so it's not been sustainable for a really long time. But
Mhm.
what we're unwilling to do, we feel that caring for people is soft. We feel that it makes us feel like we lose power. And power over strategies and high control strategies are gratifying and are embedded in so many of the systems. So people are resistant to shifting, but it's not cost effective at all. But I can be a little facetious. People say, Faith, what's the ROI of all this that you're saying? And I'm like, what's the ROI of having toilets inside your building? What's the ROI of elevators? We've stopped asking those questions because what we know is, oh, humans need bathrooms. Oh, humans need elevators. So we just put it in the balance sheet. And
Right.
I'm saying all of this, instead of asking these questions, put it in the balance sheet. This is what's needed to care for humans. Because if you had another type of resource in your business, you
Yeah.
would put that in the balance sheet as well.
Uh-huh. So since you mentioned you have a resource, I mean, human resources, right? That's how we refer to human beings.
I quite hate the word for humans. Yes.
So how do you look at that? And how can this perspective specifically shift from being
Yeah,
just,
I think
uh,
yeah, I think that once we recognize that when I say a human is not a printer, it's not a human is not a car, and so I enjoy the shift that organizations have been doing to director of people and culture and that kind of thing, where we see human resource administration as an administrative task, you know pension, whatever, but really what we're offering is care
Mhm.
and support for the humans in the place. And I think that just renaming the department and renaming the role offers a different perspective and helps us be able to do this in more human ways. Yeah.
But does just renaming the department and renaming the chief of people and culture cut it, or is there a fundamental difference?
Not not just, but I do think that our words really matter. And so, yeah, I think there is a beginning there, but I also think that like if you are actually to see, it's what we do with athletes. I think there's a lot wrong with the professional sports industry, but what we do with athletes is what's required to help this person perform their A game. All their health stuff is included. All their mental health stuff is included. Housing, what's going to go on for your partner? Where are your kids? Do you need a car? Like there is a perspective that centers this person and asks that question. And I'm saying it has to begin by centering this person that you're inviting on the team and asking the question. Nobody's asking me what's needed to help me perform my A game. They're basically saying, show up, 8 o'clock is the first meeting, whatever it is. And so I think it has to fundamentally start with when we are recruiting and onboarding, what's the purpose of that? And I have a whole thing on changing the way we onboard and the purpose of onboarding to be some of this inquiry. It has to be a research project to understand the person, to figure out how you're going to serve them best so that they can produce best. Yeah, so it's a shift in it's
Uh,
not a person and how well they fit. It has to be a what do we need to know about this person so that we can care for them well, so that they can produce well.
but also, just saying, it's a two-way street, right? The employer can try the best, but sometimes the employee is not coming in to be a screw in the right hole. They're just trying to come in and go out. get one paycheck and
But
then
it
contribute to the
doesn't really
next.
matter though, to
Mhm.
be honest, right? When you recognize that environment is 80% of the result for any behavior that we see, and research has proven this over and over again, for
Mhm.
any behavior that we see in the workplace and in system that needs to be corrected, behavior modification strategies are 80% of that behavior is system.
Right.
And you can change system, which means changing environment, and people just do something different. So even if an employee comes in with an intention just to pass through and you have a quality environment,
Mhm.
they will produce according to the quality environment because we're nature. We respond to the environments we're in. And when we're in environments that are more hostile, that are more toxic, that are low trust, we respond to that too.
That's right.
And so it's almost like we are not recognizing the power we have,
Uh-huh.
what to design the environment to give us what we want.
Mhm.
Instead, we're blaming it on an individual. And I was like, yeah, no, no, you have the power.
That's right. Thank you so much, Faith, for joining me. And this was an amazing conversation. We went all the way through from people
Went
to team.
everywhere.
That's what I like doing, going everywhere. We touched upon social media as well, creating a network inside the organization, outside the organization, and then the two-way street between an employer and an employee. So, Faith, before I close, where can people get in touch with you? Where can they know more about you?
So although it is that I'm suspicious of socials, I'm in all of them. So Faith Clarke in any social media platform. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and my website is faithclark.com. So if people email me, Faith at Faith Clarke, Clark with an E, I'd be happy to either follow up with an assessment tool if they want one for their team. I have a culture assessment video and tool that could, if they want to look at it from the culture perspective, or if they just want a conversation. I'm right now I'm talking to leaders about invisible labor. So if you want to contribute to that conversation, I'd be happy to chat with people.
Thank you so much, Faith. It was great having this chat with you. I'm sure the audience also liked it. So, for the audience who's been intently watching and listening, if you liked what we talked about, do leave a like. The comment section is open for suggestions, just general perspectives. And if you want to add to the conversation as well, that's also an option you have. And don't forget to subscribe before you close the window. Thank you so much, Faith. Thank you for joining in. Thanks to the audience as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditya.